You're listening to episode 148, Developing a Positive Self-Image After Feeling Unlovable with Laura Fenamore. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I'm so grateful to have you here, and today we're going to be joined by Laura Fenamore of SkinnyFatPerfect.com. Before we get into it, I just want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Navni. Navni is the top-ranked anonymous writing website in the world. Navni provides free wellness resources and low-cost online therapy services to help people cope with various levels of emotional distress. Write anonymously, feel better at novni.com. So Laura is a body image expert, coach, speaker, and author who's committed to empowering women to love who they see in the mirror. And she joins us today to talk about how she's gone from feeling hopeless and unlovable to being confident in her body and loving the woman she is. Now, while this episode may be more geared toward women, if there are any guys listening who struggle with issues around self-worth and self-image, then I definitely encourage you to give this a listen as well. In particular, Laura's going to talk about her childhood experiences that she sums up as being a nightmare, how she had lost all hope by the age of 24, and was considering ending it all. She'll talk about her battle with different forms of addiction, and how one person who came into her life gave her hope and a reason to believe that she could be lovable, and the impact that that had on her healing. And she'll talk about what allowed her to be open to the support of this person, and also how things weren't as she was expecting them to be when she lost 100 pounds, and why it's so important to love ourselves as who we are, and why seeking help is a sign of strength and not weakness, and how trying to control things only leads to suffering, and why self-care has to be for us and not for others in order for it to be effective. So lots of great stuff in this episode today, and I'm excited to bring this one to you. And so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it, and I'll go bring Laura on. Laura, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here today to share your story with us.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here, Melissa. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have you here. So I found out about you by coming across a post you had written for Tiny Buddha, where you talk about what you had gone through growing up and subsequently letting go of your past to create a new future, as is the title of that post. And that'll be linked up in the show notes for anyone who wants to read it. But when I read that article, I definitely wanted to have you on the show to share your inspiring journey with my audience. And as we'll talk about here in a little bit, one of the things you really struggled with was body image, and now you are a body image expert who's on a mission to help women around the world end the constant battle with food and their bodies and start adoring who they see in the mirror. And I think that's great because, of course, a lot of women in particular who experience traumatic childhoods struggle with issues around body image and self-acceptance and self-love. So I think it'll be good for us to talk about this today and to hear about how you've gone from struggling with those issues yourself to loving the person you are now. And what I'd like to do here, Laura, is have you start out by sharing with us a summary of what you experienced growing up so that we have that context, and then we'll go from there. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, so, just take a few minutes and let us know what it was you experienced.
So I always say to people, if I had to sum up my childhood in one word, it would be nightmare. And I'm going to take you back to when I was 24 years old. When I was 24 years old, most 24-year-olds, Melissa, are thinking about what they're going to do after college and what kind of career they're going to start. And, they're young and excited. And I didn't exactly have that experience. At 24, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am right now. I was an alcoholic. I used drugs regularly. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And my primary addiction was to self-hatred. So I woke up every morning, looked in the mirror, and just basically called myself a big, fat, ugly loser. And I was never in denial about my addictions and what caused them. I knew I was an addict, but I also didn't think that there was any hope for me. At 24, I was planning my exit. So taking you back even further, I was born on Long Island in New York. I'm the youngest of 8 children. I was born to a father who told me and my other 7 siblings every day, "You kids should have never have been born." That was his mantra.
Mm.
So he hated himself. He was very, very abusive. And, my mom was very, very strong in terms of being able to bear the brunt and the pain of him and have 8 children. But in many ways, she was very weak and she couldn't deal with it. So it just went on and it went on and it went on. And just to move forward, at the age of 11, some major violence happened. And it turned out that I had a brother at the time who was dying, and he said on his deathbed, "You got to help those kids," to some of my relatives. So I got out, went into foster care. My other siblings went and lived with relatives. And it was a very, very painful time being pulled from your family at age 11. And, it was a miracle and a blessing in disguise. But at the time, I felt like everything was stripped from me. And I had, I just felt like I was dying. So the addiction of first first food, and then alcohol and drugs and cigarettes and, everything you can imagine, and self-hatred grew out of that abandonment and pain of first physical abuse and then being abandoned from my family. So just fast forward to 24, at 18, I was a drunk and I moved to California thinking that it was the Holy Land that was going to save me. Unfortunately, my addiction got a lot worse. And at 24, I was planning my exit, and a miracle happened. And somebody came into my life who basically gave me hope. And while I had tried to get hope and help years earlier, nothing that anyone said really penetrated, because people would always say, "You have such a pretty face, and why don't you just lose some weight and you'll be happy?" And I had heard that all of my teenage years. And, it was pretty, went right through me. It didn't do anything except actually hurt me more. But there was somebody that I met in my early 20s who, for whatever reason, gave me a reason to believe that there was a possibility that I could be lovable and loved. And this person I consider an earth angel in my life, and she gave me help and hope and support. And I took her support, hook, line, and sinker, and ended up going from near suicide to AA meetings, which really, really turned my life around in the beginning. I got very, very involved in the fellowship. That's the year that I lost 100 pounds, got clean and sober. And that was 31 years ago. And here I am today. I'm almost 56. And to say that my life has dramatically changed for the better is the understatement. But it hasn't been, smooth road since I got clean and sober and released 100 pounds. There's been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of pain from the past that I had to deal with. But overall, I have a life today that's way beyond my wildest dreams. And I'm not special. I'm not a chosen one. I'm just somebody that was willing and able to do what was asked of me. So, I'm really grateful.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And, I can understand how you consider your childhood to be a nightmare, hearing about what you went through there. It sounds awful. And, I'm sure there are listeners out there, who can relate to some of that. And, my hope is that they find hope in your story and in your journey, and to know that, things can get better. That's what this show is about, letting others know that things can get better.
Mm.
And, doing that through speaking with people like yourself, Laura, who, have had that happen for themselves. So, I definitely want to dive into more of, how you were affected and what's helped you to get to where you are now. And so tell us more about, so when you were 24 years old, so you met someone who really changed things for you.
Mm-hmm.
But first
Mm-hmm.
off, I'm curious, what was it that allowed you to sort of receive that help and support from them, right? Because a lot of times people, they're not open to it, or they're not in the right place for it yet, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it was that allowed you to be open to it at that point?
Well, interesting that you asked that. Well, part of what was going on for me was not only did I believe what my father had said, hook, line, and sinker, that I was unlovable and that I was pretty worthless, and I had very, very low self-esteem, Melissa. But, I was fat. So I was always, I attracted people who made fun of me at the time. Like I was always being made fun of and called fat. And like that was, it just fed into that darkness inside of me. And I just didn't believe. And I was also really, I started struggling with my sexuality from when I was a very young girl. I knew that there was something different about me, but I didn't know how to deal with it. And when I moved to San Francisco, it was really clear that I was gay, and I didn't know how to deal with that. And I was so afraid. So when I did get myself into college, and like college was a saving grace for me, even though I wasn't a strong student, it was my survival in many ways because even though I was acting out, I grew a tribe of people, and people that really supported me even through my darkness. And there was but what I was doing was I was working at bars and restaurants, and like again acting out with my addictions. And I worked as a bartender and cocktail waitress in San Francisco. And this woman came in, and she was this woman that changed my life. She was just amazing, and said, I want to help you. I mean, here I was, like this crazy alcoholic drunk, and for whatever reason, she saw my light. And she didn't even live in this area. She lived on the other side of the country, and she just stayed in touch with me, and like loved me and loved me and loved me. And she actually, we ended up getting into a relationship together. But what really I learned from her, what unconditional love was in that stage of my life, because I didn't believe that I was lovable. And so she showed me love like there was nobody's business. And, people don't have to be in relationships, in actual physical relationships with people, to learn that from somebody. God knows. I mean, I, that's not the point. So I want to separate the fact that we actually got romantically involved later on. But in the beginning, she just showed me love like there was nobody's business. And I believed her. And so there's love everywhere, Melissa. There is love and help everywhere, regardless of what stage people are in their life around their trauma. There is hope and help and love everywhere. And, I was always seeking that, even though I was in tremendous pain. I was always seeking that. And this particular angel just showed up in my life in a bar. Like when I hear people say, oh yeah, I met my soulmate in a bar. It's like, okay, well, I can relate, because I met the person that changed my life around in a bar too, because I was bartending. So it's not exactly the healthiest place to meet people, but it is where it is. And that's where I was at the time. So
Yeah, and I think, we have to be open to meeting people wherever, and just knowing that that sort of thing can happen anywhere and at any time,
exactly.
and that right there, can give someone hope. Um, I think, and so many people that I've had on the show, have talked about how people have come into their lives and have supported them and really have made a difference for them. And I feel like that is so key, for
Mhm.
anyone's recovery is to have some form of support, some form of help, to not have to go through it yourself. That is such a difficult thing to do. And when you can have someone there to support you and help you and guide you along in your healing, that is going to make such a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because in our own, left to our own devices, humans are in fear and doubt, fear and doubt. And when fear and doubt is running the show, then, there's pretty little hope for us. But when we can step out of that and learn how to step out of that, when we're feeling hopeless, when we're feeling fearful, when we're feeling doubt, there's like no way around it. And I always say to try to change your mind and your heart with the same mind that is hurting you and abusing you is really challenging. So to learn tools and skills, how to step out of that mindset, it doesn't, it's practice. It's a practice and a process. It's not something that happens instantaneously.
Yeah, definitely. And so, did things start to get better for you at this point, or what sort of things were you still struggling with?
Great question. So I went from literally going to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge to I found my tribe in AA and Overeaters Anonymous. And I was like, oh my God. They talk about in the beginning of your years in 12-step programs, for anyone that has been in 12-step programs, that you're on a pink cloud. And it's true that I was on a pink cloud. I went from like near death to complete, just bliss. It was just my first year of sobriety was unbelievable. I felt like, oh my God, there's hope for me. I'm so happy that I have found this community and tribe of people that can support me. So I was in like 1,000%. And, but I had this great illusion going on that if I lost 100 pounds and got clean and sober, that all my pain from the past was going to go away. And so the confusing thing is that on one hand, I was extremely happy and finally feeling some joy in my life. And on another hand, the control freak was right there going, like, oh my God, you have to control every calorie and you have to, like, if you lose this weight, you're going to gain it back and you can't gain it back. And all that insanity was going on as well. And I was like, well, wait a minute, when I lose weight, all my problems are going to go away. I mean, I had this delusion that that was how it was going to look, Melissa. And it was like, what? So I lost 100 pounds. And ironically, I wasn't expecting for people to judge and criticize me, but I got a tremendous amount of judgment and criticism. And I wasn't prepared for that. So people were used to the fat, miserable girl. And when the thin, like more happy person showed up, people actually said to me, we miss the fat girl, we miss the joker, we miss the alcoholic, we miss the, and I was like, what? Thinking that I was going to get all this approval from people when I got thin, and learning very early on that, people are going to judge and criticize us no matter what we weigh, no matter what we look like, no matter so if we don't learn to love ourselves as we are and choose to be who we are as we are, then we're going to really suffer. Because like I was expecting that like golden like touch from everybody out there, and it was like, no, actually that wasn't going to come. So, and I was very critical and judgmental of myself as a thin person. Like I could never get thin enough. I was like 117 pounds or 100. After being like 220, I was like under weight, and I was still like, okay, but I got to get to 100. So I was obsessed with getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So my addiction went the other way. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't think this was supposed to happen. So all this stuff, but it was all that pain from the past that I still like, I could never be enough. And, you
Right.
know, at almost 56, I would be lying to you if I said, I don't still struggle with not being enough. Sometimes I do. And I know the areas that shows up with in, but I also know how to deal with it because I've worked on myself, you know, and, you know, there's a big cosmic speed up energetically on this planet, and people don't have to like suffer for a long time. They can heal quicker than, but it took me what it took me. And the first few years of my sobriety and or losing the weight, you know, it was brilliant. And like I said, joy started to come in, but there was also a lot of challenges. And thank God that I had at that time a program that really supported me through all of that. And then that just got transformed into lots of different other types of healing modalities that I've been doing all these years. And I see getting help as a sign of strength, not weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think, that just goes to show that, we can change certain external factors, right? So, I mean, for you, you were trying to control your physical appearance, or we can, move to a different location. But
Mm-hmm.
unless we do that inner work, those issues are still going to be there for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you're talking about how people were still, judging you, even though you had made these changes. And, that goes to show that, we can't control how other people are going to react or respond to us. And so it's so important for us to be secure in who we are, so that we're protected from any of that, because that is out of our control. But the one thing that is in our control is how we feel about ourselves. And so getting to a place where we do feel good about ourselves is so important when it comes to healing. And I can hear how that's been really important for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So tell us kind of, where did things go from here? What were some of those healing modalities that you started to explore?
So, the 12-step programs saved my life. The first 5 years of my sobriety, I was, like I said, completely committed to the program. And I still send people there all the time. And I still go to meetings occasionally and support it and just hold Bill and Bob, the guys that started that program, in a very high vibration, because it has changed the world. It is iconic, and I just really hold it in a very high space. And what for me happened is that I really needed to learn how to deal with all of my fears and insecurities. And I was introduced to A Course in Miracles, and I became a student of A Course in Miracles and got very involved in A Course in Miracles. And that was, where my journey led after that, because my spiritual life had been really, if I look back on my childhood and everything, it was my relationship with God that was the thing that really held me in place. I couldn't see that, feel that, touch that. But now at, almost 56, I can say that, yeah, it's been like the saving grace for me my whole life. But I needed to find a spiritual world. And that just led me, I've done all kinds of modalities with inner child work. And for 6 years, I worked with Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul. I attended his workshops, and then he mentored me and became very involved in that work, became involved in Course in Miracles work. And then just been one thing after another, got very involved in Buddhism and shamanism, and just like one thing led to another. And I just feel like it's been this tapestry throughout my life. What I did know when I was in my 30s, I spent many years working on myself, and I also was very successful as a entrepreneur who owned a speakers bureau, and that speakers bureau led me to a lot of like I worked with a lot of famous people, and I worked with a lot of people in the self-help movement, the Jacks of the world and the Deepaks and John Gray, and just tons of people in that world. And what I knew is that I couldn't be fully fulfilled unless I kind of worked through my agreement that I had made with the universe, which I wasn't really, I didn't know what that was going to look like. But in my late 20s and my early 30s, I was always writing letters to God about, you gave me a second chance. I need to help other people. I need to help other people. I want to get to the place where I can help other people. But it was really clear to me that if I didn't heal my relationship with my body, so what happened is, I remained thin and I'm healthy, and I started moving in my late 20s. I didn't lose any weight by exercising because I was very resistant to exercise. I started moving closer to 30, and I just had to deal with my resistance to it. And so I dealt with that, but then I still had all of this insane control stuff around my weight. And I knew that my work was to help women with body image and eating disorders and, disordered relationships with our bodies. But I couldn't do it in full integrity unless I had really, really nipped it in the bud myself. And that was my journey through my 30s, really, really dealing with the ways that I used hating my body and compulsive eating, or, weighing and measuring and being obsessed about the scale, all the ways that I was still doing that as a normal sized person. It was all a distraction. It was all one big giant distraction. Newsflash, we just distract ourselves in a really sick, toxic way, because really none of us were born to weigh and measure and be obsessed about our bodies and be obsessed about the scale. That just becomes because we're trained and conditioned to believe that we are our bodies and that it's something that we can control. So whatever control we do, we take it, and become obsessed and miserable. And, nothing comes from a blocked heart and a blocked head. Nothing. There's no energetic flow from control. And it took me years to really understand that and to work through it. And, I choose to eat and move and take care of myself because I love myself, not because I'm concerned about what other people think about how I look. And do I care about how I look? Of course I do, but that's coming from a place of self-love, not from a place of, self-degradation, which is where it was for a long time. So I hope that's helpful to somebody out there.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Absolutely. And, you talk about control. And of course, when we go through these things growing up, that's the one thing that is really taken away from us. We feel like we don't have control over anything. And so as we grow up, we're looking for things that we can control. And oftentimes we're controlling, things in an unhealthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely, it doesn't serve us as we're trying to heal. But learning to let go of control, that can be, such a difficult thing. And that's something, I still struggle with myself at times. It feels good to have that control, right? But the control is really, it's kind of an illusion, something that we think that we have, but we really don't,
Yeah, I do know. I absolutely do know.
Right.
Really, no matter how much I know that I'm not really in charge, it's like, oh, it's so comfortable to just hold on. And like, that's the way it's got to happen. And this is the way it has to go. And this is the way it has to be. And this is it. And, there's nothing wrong with having structure and habits in our lives. That's not what I'm talking about, because I'm a very structured, habitual person and very responsible around her time. But that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about living in surrender and faith that, there is something that is orchestrating this wonderful tapestry that's way bigger than my small mind, and that it can help me. And even though I can't feel, taste, touch it, I believe, and if I look over my life, Melissa, and I look back at my life, I go, oh my God, what? One miracle after another, because I actually was learning and open to letting go all the time. Okay, I got to let go there. I got to let go there. I got to let go there. And whenever I start to control things again, I suffer. So it's just, it's just the way it is. It doesn't mean that things don't happen when you're controlling. We're in action, but it doesn't mean that, but there's that vibration of pain that's also happening. So it's a practice. It's practice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So, of course, a lot of people who struggle with weight issues, struggle with keeping the weight off. What do you think has helped you to be able to do that?
Well, in the beginning, like I said, it was really control, and now it's self-care and self-love. But, as women, we are trained, Melissa, to believe that we are sex objects and that we are the weaker sex and that we are what we look like. And so this comparison thing starts very young. And I was an early childhood development major. That was one of my majors in college. And, I know 0 through 5, a lot gets put in on a cellular level. And if we start at that age believing that we're not good enough because we don't look like our best friend or we don't look like her. And for me, it was like I always had these skinny, pretty friends, and I always was the fat, what I thought of the fat, ugly one. So I started comparing myself and putting myself down really young, and then I was getting it in. But then there's the culture and the environment, which shows us pictures. We're exposed to over 300 images every day of perfect people, i.e. celebrities. They all look perfect and beautiful. So people get completely confused. It's like I'm being told I should be me, but then I'm looking at that perfect person and I'm really like, okay, wait, but that's not what I look like. So it's 2019 and I was a women's study. I also was a women's studies major in college. And I actually had a few majors, which was really, really great. And I was just writing a letter to somebody this morning saying, it's 2019 and the stuff I was learning in women's studies, in the 80s. It's like, people are just waking up. I feel like, the Me Too movement and it's like, okay, well, this is like old news to me. But it's finally, people are waking up and saying, okay, this isn't okay. It's like, it wasn't okay then. It's not okay now. And I'm not saying that it's just things are out of balance, and they've been out of balance for a long time. So, as a culture, as painful as this stuff that we're going through right now, it's like the crap is finally coming up to show the light. And it's always been there, always, but it's finally showing up. So I just think that our gender roles and how women are treated and how little girls are treated and how people are treated, and even for boys, oh my God, I was watching Gavin Newsom the other day talking about how boys are just so squashed emotionally and told, that they're sissies and that they have to be real men. And like, he's like, look at this, look at what's happening in our world. And I don't want to get too off topic, but how that is just creating monsters that are going out there that are, becoming raging men who are killing people. I mean, it's just crazy. So there's a call for light and love that's being completely shown, and we either rise up or we fall down, and I totally am always about rising up. So that's where my energy is focused, to wake people up even further and deeper, because it's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's great that there's more awareness now, and hopefully, as a culture, things continue to improve in that way, so that everyone, boys and girls, can feel like they can be free to be who they are.
Yeah,
because that's just going to help society as a whole. When we feel like we're not free to be who we are, that's just kind of, hurting everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so important for people to feel that way and not to feel like they're being judged or that they have to be like someone else. It's just important for them to be able to be true to who they are and feel accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, Laura, how are you doing now? And, what sorts of things do you still struggle with?
Well, I'm doing great. I have been on, an emotional, mental, physical, spiritual path my adult life, and I get support today. I always have support around me, like I said earlier, because it's a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. So, as somebody that's a coach and that helps people every day, I had a client say to me the other day, Laura, how do you listen to all these problems every day? It's like, well, it's very easy for me, especially when I get completely supported myself, um, and have the strength to do that, because in giving we receive. So I have a spiritual community, which is Celebrating Life Ministries, which is something that I've been involved in for many, many years. And I've been, it's just a non-denominational, it's a group of people that are there to serve and love and remember who we are. And I also, I have spiritual mentors and coaches and people that, like, again, I feel support. But my own work that I've been doing for the last 15 years is helping women and a few men, mostly women though, around the world, deal with their pain and distraction of hating their bodies and, hating what they weigh and how they look and so on and so forth. And there's a tremendous amount of, unfortunately, self-loathing that still exists. And I want to support women in waking up to that and changing their conversation and changing their story. So I speak and I teach, and I wrote a book called Skinny, Fat, Perfect, Love Who You See in the Mirror. And I have been very, very blessed to be able to give back what was given to me.
Mm-hmm. That's great. How long have you been doing this work for?
15 years. A long time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And tell us more about your book and who that's for.
So my book is part memoir, part self-help. So it's very, very like short and mighty, because it's only a couple of hundred pages, but it really I share my story in more depth and also give just tangible examples, using my clients as examples and some of my stories as examples of some of the tools that I've been teaching for all these years about how to wake up to yourself and your truth. One of my teachers said the other day, learning is unlearning. And we really have to unlearn so many of the painful habits that we have taught ourselves, because we're in this trance of, believing that our body is who we are. And we're in this trance of believing that we are, worthless unless we weigh a certain weight or, look a certain way. And it's just a trance. So what I do know is that it's, I think, important for people to take care of themselves. But if they're coming from an external place only, it's really never going to have longevity. So it doesn't mean that I don't care that people are eating healthier. Of course I do, Melissa. Are you kidding? I mean, I totally care that people are taking care of themselves with food and with, movement.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that people can get there sustainably until they start to love themselves and like themselves and start having boundaries with people that, might not be the healthiest people for them. So there's a lot of steps that get to that place of self-care. But what happens is people hate themselves. They go on a diet. They think that's going to fix their life. And then they fail. And then they hate themselves even more. And that's the layer. I think
Mm-hmm.
I should look like that. I'm going to try to fix it. I'm going to control it. Okay, I blew it. Okay, I'm a failure. I'm leaving, until that
Yeah.
starts up again.
And it's kind of like you're doing those things at that point for the wrong reason. You're still doing it for other people. You're not doing it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trying to prove that you're okay. trying to prove that you're enough, trying to prove that you're lovable, trying to prove that, your life will get better if only you wait a certain amount. I mean, how many brides dealt with a lot of them through the years, and I love them dearly. But, people get thin for the wedding and then they gain all the weight back the minute the wedding's over. And then, or the job interview or whatever, or trying to get the relationship, going to get thin for that. And then, all the behaviors come back the moment that's over because they controlled or willed their way through. And, the truth is we all have free will. We can do it. We can charge our way through things. I know people that have lost 100 pounds and have kept it off for years and control it, and that's their path. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying that I just didn't want to live my life weighing and measuring and controlling things. I just don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Laura, I want to ask you the final question that I have for you today. And that is, given what you know now, if you could go back to when you were going through your tough times and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question, Melissa. Well, I think the one thing that I would have said to myself is that whatever that belief was that you had in a spirit or power greater than yourself, whatever belief that I had from that childhood, that to trust it deeper. Because, I had a belief that there was something bigger than me, but I also was so victimy around, well, if there was something bigger than me, then how come my life is so crappy? And, I started to hate on the divine, hate on the spirit, hate on God, hate on all of that. And it's like, because I was pissed off. So if I could look back and just say, trust that belief. And it's leading you somewhere. And it's going to lead you somewhere, but you're going to be okay. And that's what I would tell my really pissed off, vulnerable self. Trust that belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it can be difficult for us to trust, things that we used to believe in before, because it's just something that we lose along the way. We lose that trust in ourselves and in our intuition, and it takes some time to get that back.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because humans don't want to trust anything. They want the answers right now. We don't want to believe that, this could help me because I have to see proof. And it's not to say that there aren't people that take advantage of people's trust and goodwill. Of course there are, but we all do have an intuitive side, whether we are aware of it or not. We all do. And you know what? The way that you can just see that right now is you could just think of a time in your life where you absolutely knew something. Like, I know I have to do this. Whether that thing turned out okay or not doesn't matter, but you absolutely knew I have to do this. Like Melissa, maybe you're like, I have to do this podcast. Like, you just knew it. That's your intuition. That's like guidance. That's innate guidance saying, okay, you have to do this. So what comes around that? Like, I knew I had to move to California. For like back then it was like, okay, California is going to save me. Well, I got so much worse before I got better, but California ultimately was my place. But I really didn't feel that the first 6 years I was here. It was way bad. And then it got better. But now it's home. But I knew that this was my home. I just, wasn't ready to heal yet. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Laura, before I let you go, what is the best way for people to connect with you or find out more about you?
Great. So my website, where I have powerful tools, is www.skinnyfatperfect.com. Go there and get your tools, skinnyfatperfect.com, just like it sounds, but it's SKINNYFATPERFECT.com. And then my book, Skinny Fat Perfect, Love Who You See in the Mirror, is on Amazon. And everybody can go there and order a copy. It's very affordable and it's mighty and strong. And there's lots of testimonials to show you what the book is about, if you have any doubt or wonder.
Okay, sounds great. I will have those linked up on your show notes page as well.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to, thank you for coming on here today, Laura, and for sharing your journey with us and providing us, with hope and inspiration and letting us know that, it's okay to be who we are. So thank you for that.
You got it. And can I just very quickly, there's a couple of, I have quotes. My office is just quote central, but there's two that just jumped out at me this morning, and I just wanted to read them if I could.
Sure, go for it.
So Thich Nhat Hanh said, we're here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness, that no matter how alone or separate you feel from anyone, I know it feels scary when you're isolating and alone, but you're not. And if you could just take one little baby step, like definitely listening to these podcasts is definitely a big step, but maybe a little step beyond that. Like going to get my free tool or doing something and then engaging in that. So, and then the other one is by Frederick Francis. And it says, when the eyes wake up to see again, it suddenly stops taking anything for granted. So, I don't know about you, Melissa, but I can certainly relate to that. Like the more awake I become, the less I want to take anything for granted, because everything is a gift. Even the painful crap is all part of my growth, and I'm so grateful. So thank you so much for asking me and having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing those and closing us out with that. So, all right. Well, I hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, my dear.
Thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 148. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/Laura Fenamore to find the links mentioned during this episode or to leave a comment. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Laura today, and I hope that one of the big messages you take away from it is that it is okay for you to be who you are. I know that can feel like such a struggle after growing up being made to feel bad about yourself, but you deserve to be who you truly are and to feel good about that. So I hope that this episode inspires you and gives you some guidance for your own journey to developing a positive self-image. And be sure to check out Laura's website for additional resources. And be sure to come back for the next episode for more inspiration for your healing journey. Also, head over to the website to grab your free copy of the Top 10 Strategies Guide for Survivors. In it, you'll find the top 10 most common strategies my podcast guests have used for overcoming the effects of past trauma. It's a great place to get started if you're looking for some strategies that can help you in your healing, as they have helped my guests. And you can find that at thegrassgetsgreener.com/guide or also on the show notes page. So be sure to grab that if you haven't yet. And lastly, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And, as always, have hope.